Good morning, folks. It's 9 o'clock and we'll get our meeting of the Social Services Committee underway. Chris has taken the attendance. Thank you everybody for attending. And if you're watching from home, welcome. Let me outline some of the rules and procedures. Just a reminder, I know we're all cognizant of this. Keep your microphones off when you're not speaking so we don't have any feedback or embarrassment. Keep your web cameras turned on. That's how we maintain quorum. Staff will come on and off as necessary to answer questions from committee members. To request to speak, you press the raise hand button, the little icon on the bottom of the screen, rather than physically raising your hands. Clerk staff will lower the hand when we're all done. If we get kicked off for some reason, we've got 15 minutes to regain quorum. If not, we're adjourned. Let's see, is that all the, let's see, if I got all that done? Anybody have a declaration of a conflict of interest today? I see none. I'd like to get a mover and a seconder to get the whole agenda on the floor, please. Councillor Vanderstel, Councillor Sless, thank you. Thank you, thank you. We don't have any presentations. We don't have any delegations. Are there any items that we want to separate for discussion? Councillor Miller.
5-3, please.
5-3, thank you. And Councillor Antosky.
5-2, please.
5-2 and 5-3. And I see no requests for any others. So we'll go to the question on the ballot. So those in favor? Those in favor, and that carries. Thank you. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, so we'll now go to item 5.3. Sorry, 5.2. Councillor Miller, that was your item. Would you like to go ahead and have your speaking opportunity?
Yeah, mine was 5-3, I believe, but Councillor Antosky was 5-2.
Well, Councillor Miller, go ahead and we'll do 5-3 since you've got the floor.
Okay, just it's a quick question, Mr. Chair. Through you, there's discussion in the report about a $460,000 shortfall, putting pressure on the municipal budget. Will we be seeing that $460,000 show up in the budget request, or is that going to be dealt with in other ways?
Councillor, thank you. Is there a member of staff that can respond? Aaron, you're silent.
Can you hear me now, Council?
That's good.
Oh, my apologies. So through the chair, Aaron Walsh, Director of Community Programs. So as of right now, we haven't heard anything from the province except that cut will happen January 1st. In terms of whether it shows up as a pressure in the municipal budget, there's still some areas we want to explore. I think there's some efficiencies we can find in this budget and do some work. And then we want to work with our general manager on it. So I apologize for a bit of a non-answer. So that is the number we expect to see as a pressure, but we want to do some work on that before it arrives in front of both councils for estimates.
Okay, I appreciate the answer, and I realize you guys are getting close to getting a budget finalized for next year. So, okay, we'll look for something from that. So, thank you,
Councillor. Thank you. Any additional speakers on this item? Seeing none, we'll go to the question. Those in favor? Sorry, we're just raising our hands, guys, on this. Not electronic today. Those in favor? Sorry, Chris, if you want to read the names.
Sure. Through the chair, all those in favor, please raise your hand and keep your hand raised until I call your name. Councillor Bailey, Councillor McCreary, Councillor Antosky, Councillor Miller, Councillor Sless, Councillor Vanderstelt, Councillor Wall, and Councillor Laferriere. Through the chair, motion carries unanimously on a recorded vote.
Thank you, guys. I didn't call the question on those items not separated. I'm going to do that now. I'm sorry. Oh my God, I did it. I better not do it a second time because there's people watching at home. Okay, Councillor Antosky, we'll go to your question. Item 5.2, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, just wondering in the future, maybe you have the numbers now, but we use a lot of percentages, which is good. But in terms of looking at anyone new that's coming into the system, so it looks like 83% have used the homeless system in some way, shape, or form before. But I'd like to know I think this is a quarterly report, how many new individuals each time are we, like, how many new people are coming into the system? Is that something that we have now or something that we can provide going forward in terms of numbers of people rather than percentage? I guess I could do the math, but it would be great if it was here.
Hi, Deb Schlichter, Acting Director, Housing and Homelessness Services. We can count it a number of different ways. It's if that's the way you would like it presented, we can pull that piece out and report it separately. So number of new people entering the system is what you're looking for in the report.
Yeah, I think I'd like to watch that in terms of how many new people are needing our services each time. Thank you, Deb. My second question is about the BNL, the by name list, and this reminds me of when we were working on the I forget what it's called, the situation table, the crisis table, and there were a lot of concerns about privacy, but then it became apparent that we really needed to look at where is privacy hurting the individual more and where's, so am I correct in assuming that this is where this is going? If we were going to be much better able to help residents when we share the services, and they're not going to be getting as frustrated having to go through the same process 19 times. Is that what we're looking at here?
That's correct. The by name list really asks the person for permission and consent. So they have to give their consent to be involved on the by name list and to allow us to share information with each other to provide that coordinated service. So their consent is the essential piece that's at the front end. And then from there, the other pieces can fall into place. Once we have a by name list, then when we have vacancies occurring in our supportive housing that match their needs, we can then do placements. But again, the consent piece is really at the front end.
Okay, that's excellent. And I assume they can opt in at any point. If they're nervous at the beginning, they can later on once they get more comfortable. Okay, I think that's going to be a really, really good piece. Thanks, Deb. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Celeste, go ahead. You have the floor now.
Thank you. I guess through you, Mr. Chair, to Deb. Deb, with all the research we've done and all the interviewing we've done, can we nail down a number as to how many homeless people we have in the community? I know it said something about we can guess and when we sort of know, but can you put a number to that?
So yes and no. So because the numbers change on a regular basis, there's a number of ways we can count. HIFIS, we're doing a quarterly report. So that gives you a quarterly number of what is on in our system today. So that's one way we count. The other way we count is the point in time count. That's a 1 day every couple years that we do a count. My preference, I would say, is the HIFIS count is more accurate because that system, we can go into any day during the year and pull out a number and we would see what's happening in the system today. So it gives us a dynamic picture of who is coming and going, whereas the point in time really only gives you a 1 day picture. So I would prefer using the HIFIS numbers as our most accurate number. You're getting the second quarter, so it's accurate as of the second quarter. The third quarter will give you another report, and you'll see the numbers adjust again. But anytime, HIFIS is probably the best.
Can you give me that number?
It's in the report. Sorry. The number of homeless people, so the unique number of individuals, 185 are the people that we've counted. That's on page 6 of the report in the chart.
But then we would have to extrapolate out because I think it indicated in the report that doesn't capture everybody, but it gives you an opportunity to kind of get your head around it. But knowing what we know, what we don't know, can you put a number on what you think it might be based on everybody we haven't captured, but we kind of know who are there?
So there's two sort of groups. One are those who are accessing our shelters, and this is the shelter number, so we know that population. The other population is the group that doesn't use the shelters for whatever reason, the unsheltered group. We have estimated somewhere between 15 to 20 individuals perhaps in that group. So that's the current, that's the point in time, trying to count the unsheltered folks in the system. So those are the two pieces.
So at the time this was put together, roughly 200 people then are homeless within the community.
That would
make sense?
Make sense, yes.
Just one further, if I could, Mr. Chair. How would that rate per capita against comparator communities?
We can do a comparison. We know every community our size or larger has a similar problem with homelessness and people needing services. And so not every community has HIFIS in place, and not every community has a robust point in time count. Some are just starting to do that. We've got 3 years of data now that we can use as comparison. So some are at the front end of this. We've got a bit more history. So it depends what you compare to, but every community likely has a similar size, if not larger.
Okay, it's just, I constantly hear that we have an overabundance of homeless folks wandering our community. And I tend not to believe that as a hard number, but in the meantime, I have nothing to say, no, you're wrong. And this is the true data. That if there's a way to create that data in a reliable way, that would be extremely helpful.
That's time, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor
you,
Vanderstel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Deb. Deb, point in time studies, who typically funds those exercises?
Through you, through the chair. There are two funding sources for point in time counts that they're required to do. One is provincial, one is federal. So we use the federal Reaching Home funding for the point in time count, some of the costs, and some of the other costs are provincial. Both of them require doing a point in time count, and now they're a little bit more aligned as to what they require so that we don't have to do it twice.
Okay, and who are the parties that actually do the count? Are they local parties or are they brought in?
Through the chair, the report that's on the docket today is about the point in time count. It lists all the different groups. So there's a steering group that helps to plan the point in time count, agencies and services in Brantford, and then in the county. So we've got a group that provides that sort of steering function. And then there's a number of groups that participate in the actual count. So
right. So if you were, based on your experience, I heard you say you appreciate the results coming from the HIFIS regular daily inputs of people in our shelter system, or those who choose to access it. As opposed to a point in time study, which methodology do you feel gives us the best indicator of the hidden homeless phenomenon?
I would say the point in time count helps us get a better picture of the unsheltered group, because we go under bridges, we go into abandoned places, we go to places where we suspect people will be or where we understood people to be, and we try to get connected at that time, face to face. Registry Week is a similar kind of a function where we try to figure out all those connections to unsheltered folks. HIFIS, we're using more and more for more in the shelter system, but as agencies start to use that, we will be making that our main system. But I would say the point in time really is the one way that we go right outside to face to face and try to capture what's going on. There are some caveats to doing it that way because it's just one day in the year. It's the best way we have right now to really get a grasp on that number.
Thanks, Deb. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Ferrier, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we know that homelessness is one of those things where the numbers shift and change. So we might have a number of 185, 200, 220, but it may not be. It actually won't be the same people for a majority of those folks year over year, right? So when we look at the Canadian population, we see at any given night 35,000 people are homeless in a country of 37 million, right? And then when we look at homelessness in terms of percentage, you go, well, it's a little higher, it's a little lower. However, if you look at it through a year, we look at almost 300,000 people who experience homelessness in Canada in a given year. So we can probably extrapolate, based on what I was reading in the report, similar trends here in Brantford Brant. Is that a fair reading?
Yes, through the chair, that would be fair.
So there's the moving target piece, but my sense, and some of this is from my social work contacts, is that especially with recent builds in Brantford, that there were some folks who've been homeless for quite some time and really exacerbating our systems that we share jointly. And a lot of those folks, yes, there was a little bit of a hurdle, and we saw at this committee some complaints in the community about some of those builds and some of the results of those builds. But now you're seeing a bit of an evening out. Is that a fair characterization too? That you're seeing a bit of an evening out?
Yes, through the chair, we've seen that those targeted supportive housing options are making a difference. Mm-hmm. And certainly those people are not in our system any longer because they're successfully housed.
So then, through you, Mr. Chair, if we have about a 1.5% floating rate of homelessness in the community, just doing quick math there, that floating rate's going to be around no matter what, really, because there's a new homelessness that always appears while folks are getting housed. But would you categorize the more as a percent of caseload of the homelessness you're seeing is that folks who are experiencing homelessness in a short term or a medium term, that they're finding themselves homeless because of whatever reason, and they're also then getting housed as other people are getting homeless, and they're cycling through to some sort of stability? And that's the point, guys. We're never going to get rid of the complete homelessness, but that's a positive compared to, say, I know 10 years ago, doing studies with the Brantford Roundtable on Poverty and saying, we had 316 in a homelessness count not that long ago, 10, 12 years ago. So this is really good progress considering the moving target that this will always be. So a good report. And I just want to thank you for presenting it.
Councillor, thank you. I'll ask a couple of questions since I don't see anybody in the queue. Deb, we ask folks, I guess, or we observe folks with respect to two criteria, whether they may or may not be Indigenous and whether they may or may not be veterans. Is that a question that we ask, or a question that we ask and or observe of people?
Through you, that is a required part of our counting, is to count people who identify as veteran or Indigenous.
So that means they tell us.
Right.
Is that correct? They tell
That's
us,
right.
okay. And with respect to those two statistics, do you have access to see how we relate to other communities with respect to the number of veterans and First Nations folks that are homeless in our community?
I think we've done some comparisons around the Indigenous population. We do have higher percentage locally. That makes sense that that's the case. Veterans, I don't know that we've done a comparison of.
Okay. And certainly we target First Nations folks with specific programming. Is there any targeting for veterans with respect to specific programming?
Through you, not at this point.
Is there any relationship we have with the field regiment here in town in terms of offering assists?
Anthony is also on this call. I believe that we may not, but I'll let Anthony maybe answer that if he might know something different than I do. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Deb, and through the chair. So we are connected with the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness, Councillor, and they have a program there called Operation Built for Zero. So essentially across the province, targeting homeless veterans is a staple, and we are trying to get down to exactly that, is 0. And I can tell you, as per your first question, in regards to our municipality and county, our homeless veteran population is substantially lower than other municipalities. I know previous work that I'd done in London, we had a pretty high level of veteran homelessness, but in Brantford Brant, it's actually quite low. So we will make those connections moving forward, but certainly our Indigenous population is higher based on, I guess, the most recent point in time count.
Sure. Yeah.
And obviously our HIFIS.
Those numbers are quite low unless you're one of those numbers, in which case it's 100% if you're looking at it through the other lens. I wonder if you might want to reach out to the people at 56 Field Regiment and see if there's a role they might want to play in this. And thank you. Any other requests to speak, guys? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to the question. Those in favor, please raise your hand physically.
Councillor Wall, Councillor Bailey, Councillor Antosky, Councillor Miller, Councillor McCreary, Councillor Vanderstelt, Councillor Sluss, Councillor Ferrier, and Mayor Davis. Motion carries unanimously on recorded vote.
Just point of order, Mr. Chair. It's Mayor Bailey. Although LaFerrier was said right.
My apologies.
Sorry, what's your, you just got the name wrong, Mark? Is that the thing?
No, you just keep calling him Councillor Bailey. It's Mayor Bailey.
Of course he is.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. So that's the end of our separations today. We do have a resolution on the docket. Councillor Vanderstelt, would you like to bring that forward now, please?
100% guaranteed. If Chris, if you could pop it up on the screen there. Save me jogging back and forth. Thank you very much. Having difficulty reading it. All right. Anyway, 7.1 development initiatives for affordable housing developers. Whereas the council approved Housing Stability Plan 2014-2024 identified targets for creating both 506 municipally owned new affordable housing units and 337 new affordable housing units created by nonprofit and private sector partners by 2030 to address population growth while maintaining current service level standards. And whereas the Municipal Housing Master Plan approved in October 2019 set a target of 506 municipally owned and operated new affordable housing units to be developed between 2020 and 2030. And whereas the Housing Stability Plan of 2014-2024 also has a goal of increasing and preserving affordable housing options, which include increasing affordable housing ownership opportunities. And whereas significant outcomes of the Mayor's Housing Partnerships Task Force that took place in 2020 were to identify municipally owned sites that would be potentially suitable for affordable housing development, to identify possible municipal financial resources, and to establish a mentorship program to encourage affordable housing development. And whereas, pardon me, the Mayor's Housing Partnership Task Force Affordable Housing Action Plan, approved in January 2021, is to encourage municipal, nonprofit, and private sector partners to develop more affordable rental and home ownership housing, and to find a way to accelerate this process. And whereas the city provides some incentives for the development of affordable rental and home ownership housing through the Housing and Homelessness Services Department, such as development charge relief through the Municipal Housing Facilities Bylaw. And whereas the city also provides some incentives for all types of housing development through the Planning Department, and recently approved downtown and Grayfield community improvement plans include incentives for the development of affordable housing units. Now, therefore, be it resolved, A, that staff be directed to report back to council by fall 2021 with a summary of current city initiatives for affordable rental and home ownership housing development, which could be shared with potential developers, and B, that staff conduct further research regarding other incentive options that may be considered. And pardon my frog and my...
Councillor, may I interrupt and ask for your seconder, please?
Well, I wish I had one.
I see Councillor Antosky was quicker than Councillor Wall. So Councillor Antosky will be the seconder. And Councillor, due to the length of that resolution, you don't have much time left.
Well, here's a unique suggestion for you. Councillor Weaver, whose chair I'm sitting in at the moment, also has 4 minutes. So could I use his 4 minutes as well?
Councillor, you are acting on behalf of Councillor Weaver in his absence. So Councillor Weaver does not have 4 minutes of speaking
Either way,
time.
there's a missing 4 minutes, Mr.
And
Chair.
that used up another 15 seconds.
Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. Further speakers to the item? Councillor Wall, go ahead, please.
Yeah, yes, I support this. I'm just kind of curious if anyone can comment on, beyond the incremental tax initiative we did with the community improvement areas. I just remember there being a lot of contention even about that item, about what, you know, when the municipality is providing. Could staff elaborate on what kind of hypothetical scenarios we're talking about with this motion?
Through the chair, sorry, what the proposed is that we would put together a package of what's currently in place, and then we would also look at some incentives that are elsewhere. So some of the incentives that are elsewhere are that the fees are covered, for example. So every time you do a site plan application, or you do any kind of the fees that are in place for a building permit, all those kind of things, sometimes those are also covered for affordable housing. There are different incentives that different municipalities offer. So we would do a scan of what those different opportunities are. Not that all of them are what you may want to put in place, but they're just to give you some ideas of what others may be using.
I mean, that sounds like a great idea. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor, thank you very much. Councillor Ferrier, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question and a comment. The question: Will there be an opportunity in this report? Will staff be connecting with local developers to sort of get a bit of their ideas on what may or may not help? I find when they are asked the question, sometimes they don't know, but I think over the last 6 to 10 years, they've developed more of a desire to at least explore this space and may have some ideas. So is that part of this?
We can include that. That would be more of a consultation piece. There are some already existing groups where developers are around the table, so we could probably access some of the existing groups to get that kind of feedback.
And then I also wonder through you, Mr. Chair, if there might be an opportunity, I don't know where else to bring this up, but we just changed some of our official plan based on a developer coming to us saying we want to do affordable housing in the county of Brant. And so we changed part of our official plan to allow for that. And, there's some momentum in the county on some of this as well. So if there's any opportunity to loop any county staff in, or if there's suggestions about how as a partner, we can also potentially look at some changes that might dovetail nicely with the changes you're expressing, so that there's some support, mutual support, joint support on this. I think that would be really welcome on the county side, if possible.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Antosky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Deb answered some of this, but a lot of this is about, many of us see different programs that are being run in different communities, and often through the private sector. And so although financial incentives are going to be a big part of this, it's not always about financial incentives. Sometimes it's just about the model, and it's about the partnerships out there. So I think, a big piece of this is really just more strongly developing our partnerships in the private sector, and continuing to watch what other communities are effective with, because we have tended to just look internally, and it is time to build this out. Maybe the 3 Ps, but definitely with private partnership anyways. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Sorry, Councillor Vanderstel, you'll have to wait a moment because Mayor Bailey is ahead of you in the queue. Go ahead, Mayor.
No, I just noticed that it was reporting back to council. Could we have everything reported back to both councils that comes out of this resolution, please?
I believe that was the intent, Mayor.
It doesn't say that though, sir.
Yes, it's implied, and we'll certainly make sure it comes to both councils.
Don't like
Thank you,
things
Mayor.
that are implied, Mr. Chair.
Do you wish to amend it, Mayor? You're muted, Mayor.
I said, if you guarantee me it's fine, your worship's replacement,
I'm asking if you want to amend it to, you said you didn't like implied, so you have the floor, sir. It's up to you to amend it, and I suggest you do if you feel strongly.
I have your word that it will be fine.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Vanderstel, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How much time do I have now? 4 minutes? Okay, following up on the report back, how outside of development community and community partners watching this meeting and a few other comments made during committee, maybe council, how are we signaling our intention to work with our community partners on these multiple different opportunities and possible projects? Is it something that it's part of our normal package whenever a developer comes to the city or the county and says, hey, you know what, I'd like to do this, that, and the other? Or do we actually actively try to attract people who build with affordable housing in mind or supportive housing in mind? What venue do we use, or do we use multiple venues in order to make this a reality?
Through the chair, I would suggest that we include in our report back a bit of a strategy on how we plan to utilize the material or the package, and how active, some active things that we could do, as well as more the passive approach.
Okay, Mr. Chair, do you believe that there should be a brief amendment to ask for staff report back on the methodology that we use to communicate with our community partners?
Councillor, you have the floor. You are the mover. If you
I think I'll leave it as direction.
I'm sorry?
I think I'll leave it as direction to staff. My concern is that none of the threads get dropped. We've spent an awful lot of time and energy toward affordable housing options in the city of Brantford County, Brant. And I think it's important that we don't let that communication slip or fall. And we take every opportunity to let the community know what our true intentions are and what direction we would like to take. So I'll take that as, or I'll send that as direction to staff to make sure that we follow up on that. Thank you.
Councillor, while you have the floor, may I ask you a question? Would you and your seconder be amenable to satisfying Mayor Bailey's desire to change the wording of city to, reporting to city and county councils? Would you accept
100%, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
The clerk will note that, and thank you, Mayor, for raising that. Councillor Vanderstel, anything further?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, I see no further requests to speak, so we'll go to the question on this. Those in favor, raise your hands physically, please.
Councillor Wall, Mayor Bailey, Councillor Antosky, Councillor Miller, Councillor McCreary, Councillor Vanderstel, Councillor Sless, Councillor Ferrier, and Mayor Davis. Motion carries unanimously.
So that concludes the active business of our agenda today. There are no notices of motion. I will ask members of committee if there are any questions of staff that they would like to ask during the question period. And I see none. So this meeting will be adjourned. We'll take a couple of minutes and we'll come back with the next one, folks. Thank you. Okay, let's get started with the Brant and Brantford Local Housing Corporation Board of Directors meeting. We have the roll call. Mayor, yes? Mayor Bailey?
I was just wondering for the roll call, it doesn't have Mayor Davis listed either as president or regrets. Was he at this meeting or was he not at this meeting?
Which meeting are you speaking of? The minutes?
I'm speaking of the minutes of May the 5th.
I will ask the clerk if he has knowledge of that.
Through the chair, I don't have knowledge of that. I didn't take the minutes for that meeting.
Mayor Davis, do you have recollection of whether you were there or not?
Sorry, just monitoring a EOC meeting as well. No, I don't have it off the top of my mind. I'd have to look at the minutes and figure out whether I was there or not.
So since the question's been raised about the minutes, we will defer the consideration of the minutes to a meeting later, okay? We'll take that off today's agenda. Thank you for raising that, Mayor Bailey. Now the chair will take a moment to try and recapture where he was in the agenda. We've taken the roll call. Did I ask for declarations? I believe I did. I didn't see any. We do have items for consideration consisting of consent items. Could I get a mover and seconder for everything on today's agenda? Councillor Sless, Mayor Bailey is the seconder. Is there any request to separate any item?
Point of order.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor.
Mayor Davis was at the May 6th meeting, May 5th meeting. It's on YouTube. So we could then do the minutes if that's taken care of.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Councillor Ferrier. Thank you for that quick bit of research. So the minutes are included in the agenda. We have moved and seconded them inclusive. So they will be on today's agenda. They will not be deferred. And I did ask if there were any separations. Councillor Miller, do you have a separation that you'd like, sir?
Well, I do have a question on the main report, Mr. Chair.
You're talking about 511?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. We will separate that and I'll come right back to you. I don't see any other requests, so we're going to vote on everything else other than 5.1.1. If you could raise your hands to indicate your vote in favor, please go ahead.
Councillor Wall, Mayor Bailey, Councillor Antosky, Councillor Miller, Councillor McCreary, Councillor Vanderstelp, Councillor Sless, Councillor Ferrier, and Mayor Davis. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Chris. And Councillor Miller, back to you concerning 5.1.1. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's just relating to the capital projects. I have two questions on that one. First question is, are all the capital projects, those repairs that they do and the projects that they implement, are they all funded from rental revenues? In other words, do we need any municipal additional taxpayer support for that? That's my first question.
Good morning. I'm Donna Kirshnoff, Manager of Housing Operations. So for the majority of the capital projects that are listed here, there can be some provincial funding through SHAPE. There are some initiatives that we're using here for some of our projects, but the majority of our capital projects would be covered through our reserve funds. So whatever we would have to be contributing to our reserve funds on an annual basis, and that could be part and parcel of revenues that we receive through the year.
Okay. I didn't get the exact answer I was looking for. The reserves, you fund it from the reserve funds. Some of the rental revenue goes into the reserve fund, but like I said, do you know if the rental revenues cover all of it?
No, they do not.
Okay. And then my second question is, it's more item specific. Do you separate based on the housing project? For example, you take the rental revenues from, say, Lorne Towers, and those are just allotted to Lorne Tower project, or does it just go all into a central pot and you distribute it as required?
Through the chair. So it would go into a central pot for the local housing corporation, and it would be distributed amongst the projects that need the funding. So it's not specific to each building or each site.
Okay, I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
If I could also elaborate on the budget. So the operating budget consists of the revenue coming in from rent, but the operating budget has an allocation that we have to put into reserves and a percentage of the operating budget. So it is technically coming from rental revenue. Every building contributes to a portion of the operating budget to the reserve fund, and that's where most of the capital repairs come from.
Yeah, thank you. I suspected most of it they would be able to carry it, but I didn't know if they could carry it all. So appreciate the answer.
Can I
Counselor, thank
add
you.
a little piece? Sorry. You're right in terms of, does it cover everything? As you know, as buildings age, the capital costs are increasing. And so at some point, what we have in the reserves won't be adequate to cover our capital repair items. But right now we're managing, but at some point that can change. Yeah.
Any further discussion on this item, guys? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. Those in favor?
Counselor Wall, Mayor Bailey, Counselor Antosky, Counselor Miller, Counselor McCreary, Counselor Vanderstel, Counselor Sless, and Counselor Ferrier. Motion carries unanimously.
And that concludes the business. We have no resolutions before us. We have no notices of motion, so we're adjourned on this one. Our county friends, you're welcome to stick around for the remainder of the fun today. Otherwise, we will see you next month, same bat time, same bat channel. Thanks, folks, and we'll take a couple of minutes and come back with the Brantford housing.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Fine, thanks.
Okay, Brantford Municipal Nonprofit Housing Directors Meeting is now underway. We have the roll call. Does anyone have a declaration of a conflict of interest? Okay. A mover and seconder for everything before us today, Councillor Vanderstel, Councillor Sless. Thank you very much. Are there any separations for discussion, folks? Seeing none, we'll go right to the question on the main motion. Those in favor, please raise your hands.
Counselor Wall, Counselor Antosky, Counselor McCreary, Counselor Vanderstel, Counselor Sless, and Mayor Davis. Motion carries unanimously.
And thank you. We have no resolutions. We have no notices of motion. So we are concluded today. Thanks for, Counselor Wall, sorry. Go ahead, please.
Motion to adjourn, that's all. Sorry.
Oh, very, very well done. You beat them to the punch. Thanks, everyone, for being here today. Thanks for watching at home. And we'll see you again next month. Bye-bye.
Have a good day, everyone.